Hello and welcome to the first lecture in this series, which is on how to select the course of study. This is the overview of the lecture series and we are at the first step of course selection. The learning objectives of this lecture includes the questions that you need to ask yourself regarding what are your plans after MS, what are your strengths and weaknesses, your areas of interest, as well as how do you plan to fund your education. We will also go into the different options that you have for pursuing a master's degree in the US, where we will talk about different core pharmacy areas as well as the non-core areas of pharmacy. So let's begin with the questions that you need to ask yourself. First, I would like to emphasize that this is a very important decision to make. Just like it is important to explore all your options before taking a decision, this is also valid on this particular question of the course selection. So you should explore all the areas that are available to you to pursue your master's degree, and then you should make a choice of what course you want to study. This is also important because you will be studying this course for 2 years, but you will be working in this field for the next 35 years, meaning that what you will learn over the next 2 years, you will be using that for a major time when you work. So it is very important that you like and you enjoy doing what you learn over the next 2 years. So let's look into the different areas of pharmacy that could be of interest to you, right? So here you should be thinking about what are the subjects which you really enjoyed over the last 4 years when you were doing your B Pharm. What are the subjects that you really liked and you wanted to know more about? For example, you have studied about pharmaceutical manufacturing process. You may have had a subject on industrial pharmacy. So, if you really enjoyed about learning how the tablets are manufactured, how the manufacturing process is scaled, what are the different instruments which are required, you may choose industrial pharmacy as a area for doing a master's in the US. Similarly, if you enjoyed learning about microorganisms and how the cells are cultured and all the biotech related courses that you did, you may also choose this field to pursue a master's in. I would like to mention here that as a pharmacy student, you are eligible to apply to all of these areas. And it's not like because you have a degree in pharmacy, you cannot apply for a master's in biotechnology or a master's in microbiology. But if that is an area of your interest, you can definitely apply for this. Another example is on pharmaceutical regulations. So you learned about jurisprudence, the different regulations which are required before starting a pharmaceutical company or starting a medical shop. So these sort of things are covered in a master's program on pharmaceutical regulations, which we call as regulatory science. And we will go into much more details as we go ahead, but I would like to just point here that if you liked about reading different regulations and understanding them and applying them, then this could be also an area which you can think of pursuing a master's in. Clinical research again is in the last few years there have been a lot of focus on this. There have been a lot of companies which have come to India which perform clinical research. You have a lot of jobs available in this area. So you can also think of this field if you really like about working with patients, you like pharmacology, or you like biology as a whole. So this can be a area to further study in. So these are just a few examples. So likewise you can think of all the different subjects that you have studied, and from there you can start thinking about what you really liked. Next, you should look into what are your strengths and weaknesses. One easy thing to do would be to just look at your mark sheets from the last 3-4 years, and you will be able to see which courses you were getting a good grade in, which courses you were not performing so well in. Based on that, you may be able to select some of the courses as well. So as an example, if biology is not your core area of strength, you don't like biology as much, but you do like trying to read up things on the internet and then finding an answer to something. So this is exactly what you would do in a regulatory course or in a regulatory work environment. So regulatory science may be a course of choice for you. If you like maths, you can choose pharmacoeconomics or clinical research design related courses where a lot of statistics are involved. You use a lot of advanced statistical things as well. So these you would be able to study in a master's program, and a master's program focused on clinical research design or pharmacoeconomics will help you gain those skills, so you can use them over the next few years when you work. If you like core pharmacy areas like pharmaceutics, medicinal chemistry, pharmacology, these are all the all are basic core pharmacy areas, and so if you like these areas, you may do well in research oriented courses. So where you can do a master's and then let's say do a PhD if you want to. Even after a master's, you can go for a job working in the industry as a research associate, doing experiments, and those kind of things. So we'll also look into a bit more details when we look at the different options. The next question you should ask yourself is, what do you want to do after your MS? So this is particularly important because it will help you decide decide and plan for your career path. So usually students go for two options. Either after their masters they go for further studying, where they would then target to get into a PhD program, do a postdoc, and then become an assistant professor. So more academic line of career, but some students also want to get into the industry immediately after doing masters, and there are lots of jobs which are specifically for these kind of students. So you can target here roles like scientist roles, regulatory affairs associates. These are mainly managerial roles in a corporate setting where you have a specific task which you have to perform, and based on that the company takes those things ahead. It is important to understand that if you plan to study after masters, you are following a more academic path, where you should then be targeting sometime running your own laboratory with your own ideas, if you are really interested in research. And it's okay if you're not sure about that right now. Maybe during the master's program you will get a better idea about it, and you may think, okay, I really enjoy learning about research, I really want to do study further in this area. You can then choose to become a professor and follow this path. Even if not a professor, there are different areas as well where you can apply your critical thinking ability, which is basically taught in a PhD program or even during your master's program that you cultivate. The benefit of this particular path is that if you are really determined about research, you want to do something new, something helpful for the patients, you want to bring out a new therapy. If you are motivated in that way, this allows you to choose the research area that you want to work in. So some student may be really passionate about cancer, they want to do something on cancer. So as a student then following this path, you would be able to have your own lab which focuses on cancer and does research on that particular thing. So this is one area that you can follow. Comparatively, I would say there is lesser pay, at least at the start, till you become, let's say, a professor. This particular career path will have lesser pay as compared to a person who is working straight away in the industry. But nevertheless, students or people who choose this path because of their passion about research, or because they want to do something. And it's also not like you will earn very less, but it's just relatively as compared to students who are directly working. So if you target an industrial position after your masters, you may see yourself in a corporate position and then advance through the ranks over the year as you gain more and more experience. The pro here is that of course this is going to be a well paying job, but the con is that you should be really sure that you like that work, because once you get into that job profile, you should be motivated to continue it, because after a few years if you find that you are not really liking what you are doing, it becomes very difficult to change your job or change your field in which you are working in, or to go back to study. So that is again an important thing to keep in mind. A lot of people also, after studying further, like after doing a PhD, would go on to work in the industry. So this is also an option. It's not like once you choose to study after your masters, you do not have a chance to get into industry. There are lesser options, but definitely day by day there are more and more options which are increasing. There are new advances into the field as well, and we will discuss a few as we go ahead as well. So, so this is also an option that you choose to take, you choose to study further and then choose to work. Okay. Next, you should also think about, do you plan to return back to India at some point? Why this is important is because a lot of students, their research area which they are really interested in may not have such a strong base here in India. So, they do not then have a lot of options in terms of jobs when they come back to India, and so it is important to select, to realize that what is the strength and weakness of India, or the Indian pharmaceutical industry to be specific. So, as you all may be knowing, Indian pharmaceutical industry is more of a generic industry. We don't do a lot of cutting edge or new drug research, although times are changing, but it's still very slow, and it may take a few more years for us to be doing really new drug research. So, we are really very focused on generics and manufacturing generics and those kind of things. So, if you enjoy that kind of thing, you can definitely target that kind of area. The longer you work and you stay in the US, this consideration becomes less and less relevant. What I mean by that is, as you gain more and more experience working in the US, it does not really matter then that what are the strengths and weaknesses of India as such, because once you are there for a long time, you develop so much skills that that companies in India, or you will definitely find something to work on in India, or where you can contribute in. So keep in mind about that. Other thing is, you should also think about what city are you planning to move back, right? If you are from a small city in India where there is not a lot of pharmaceutical industry or industry in general, then would you be ready to move within India? So, if it is, a lot of students, a lot of people try to move back to India because of their families. So, you have to keep in mind, is your family then going to be willing to move within India to a new city? Because if that is not going to be possible, then just moving back to India would not help, right? So, so within India, if you are ready to move, that should also be a thing that you should consider. If you are following an academic career path, if you are planning to follow, it is important to consider if your degree will be how it will be considered back in India. So, to give you an example, there are lots of MS in research courses in the UK, which are not recognized by universities in India because they are 1-year courses. So, you need a 2-year master's degree to be eligible for further pursuing a PhD or targeting associate professor or assistant professor kind of jobs back in India. So, so make sure you check on this as well. Okay. Next, you should also think about how you are planning to fund your education. So, if you are particularly planning to take an education loan, then you should rather focus on industry oriented courses, because after your masters, if you are going to continue studying further, then your education loan may not be easily paid back, and so you will, from a PhD stipend, it's usually not enough to pay back your education loan. So, you need to consider that as well. Although it is not impossible, it becomes a bit difficult. It will be, so if you are then in that case, if you are going with an education loan, and you are targeting an industry oriented job, industry oriented position, you should be trying to get as many industry oriented skills during your masters. You should develop skills which are going to be required by the industry, and that is how you can make yourself more acceptable to the industry, and you can get a job easily. Again, finding a job is not going to be an easy thing. So, the more you work on it right from the start, it will be better. You can check on the various job portals as to what kind of roles you want to target, what kind of requirements they have, and then try to gain those kind of skills during your masters itself, so that it will help you. Here you should also think about internships. In the US, when you study, you are eligible to do a internship which is called as the curricular practical training. So you can spend a semester or so working in the pharmaceutical industry or any company where you can get this kind of experience. So this could really help you when you're targeting positions after your masters, or if you have some professional experience when you start looking for jobs. Okay, coming back to the question on pursuing a PhD, if you are thinking, if you are really sure that I want to pursue a PhD after a few years, or I see myself as doing a PhD at some point of time, you should then be thinking, should you now be directly applying for PhD? Yes, so a B Pharmacy student from India is completely eligible to directly apply for PhD programs. You do not need a master's degree to be eligible to apply to a PhD programs. All PhD programs in the US, they do not require a master's degree as such. It's all based on your research experience. It's all based on your publications history. So if you can show that you have a good research experience, you are really motivated about research, you want to do a PhD, you can get directly into a PhD program. So even for lot of students, basically what they do is, after their bachelor's in pharmacy, they would work in some labs in India where they will get research experience and then apply for PhD programs, and then try to go for a PhD abroad. The reason this also helps is because in a PhD program, then you get a stipend. You don't have to pay any tuition fees. So monetary wise, this is much more affordable than a master's program as such. Okay. You should also be thinking about what do you see yourself as doing after 10 or 20 years. So as I told you about this before, are you okay with imagining yourself to be doing research after 20 years? Okay, so it should not happen that you don't see yourself as doing research after 20 years, but you are still choosing an academic career path right now. So that disconnect would definitely trouble you at some point of time, and then if you try to change fields, it may be too late. So think about it. If you really or it may happen the other way as well. If you're trying to get into industry position at the moment, but down the line after 10-15 years you do not want to be working in a company, doing something for some company, and taking specific tasks where you may not know how what may be the next step on that task, which may be what next decision may be taken by the company. All those sort of things come into the picture. So you can think about, do you see yourself as doing research? Then there are specific type of courses then you can select. If you think about getting into industry positions or doing more industry specific work, then you can choose those kind of specific courses as well. So we'll go through those options as we come to that section. Okay. Another common question with which students ask, and which you should also think about, is what are the fields which are currently in demand? After you do your masters, would there be a demand for that course, right? So there are for this you need to keep up with the developments in the industry. If you read a lot of news articles, you will find recently nowadays these two terms always keep coming up. The one is clinical research, which has been there in the news, I guess, for the last 10 to 20 years, and it is still continuing because there are lots of jobs in this particular field. There are lots of research that happens in India with clinical research. And the other thing which has recently come up is artificial intelligence and machine learning. Okay, so what I'll go in a bit details about this in the coming section, but just wanted to mention this here, that for this particular thing, these are just couple of examples. You can think of some other courses as well, and if you find them to be really interesting, you should try to understand how that particular field works by getting first hand knowledge. You try to find someone who works in that field, and just ask them how do they spend their day, what they do for that particular work in that particular area. That way you will get an idea about what is the exact kind of work which is involved in this particular field, and you may be able to take a decision if you really like this or not. So, it is important that you go through this, because there are lots of options which keep coming up. You may hear from different people as well, but you should yourself do your own research to understand the field and then make a decision if you really want to pursue a master's there. Okay, now coming to the second section, which is on the different options. So, let us discuss the core pharmacy areas of study first. So, here what I will do is I will talk about the research areas, and I will try to give you some examples about what kind of work will go on in that particular research area. So, that way you can think if you really like that area, or based on these examples, if you like that particular research field, then you may choose to do a master's in that particular field. Okay. So, first pharmacy core area, as we all know, is pharmaceutics, where you learn about dosage forms, you learn about tablet manufacturing, the different equipments that are used to manufacture, all of those things, right. But when we talk about research areas, so a lot of research in this particular field happens in targeted drug delivery. So, what this exactly means is that we want to target drugs to specific areas of the body, but if you do not target it, then as you can imagine, we will have to take a larger dose, and that may lead to more side effects and those kind of things. So, we want to target the drug as much as possible to only the area where we want it to work on, right. So, this particular thought is specifically useful in cancer. If you all know, cancer is uncontrolled growth of cells, right. So, what you see over here is the blood flow on the left side, and these are the different cells, and uncontrolled growth of these cells. The cells which are closer to the blood stream will have some sort of blood supply, but if you go deeper into the tumor volume, you will find cells where there is very less oxygen supply. Even after such less oxygen supply, these cells are able to grow, because they have changed themselves in such a way that they are able to grow even without the oxygen supply. And so, now we can use this against the cancer cells by developing drugs which are only activated under these sort of situations, where there is very less oxygen supply. Those drugs can get activated. If we are able to do that, then the drugs, even if it reaches other parts of the body where there is enough oxygen supply, the drug may not be activated, and in that way we would be able to target the drug to the cancer cells. So, this is what is this thought is used to develop drugs, and there are lots of chemical entities now which are in clinical testing for this purpose. So, this is one kind of an example where you can target drug delivery. Second example I will want to mention here is about antibodies. So, we all know antibodies are natural defenders in our body against any foreign pathogen or foreign particles, right. Antibodies, the benefit with antibodies is that they are very specific. The regions on the antibody are very specific to the target that we are wanting that antibody to target, right. So, in that case, you can also engineer the antibody in such a way that you utilize that specificity. So, what happens is there are specific drugs which can be linked to this antibody, so that then the antibody will act as a carrier for that drug basically. This is very useful in as an example I will mention about the brain. We all know that the brain is separated from the rest of the body through what we call as the blood brain barrier, right. It is a very tightly organized composition of cells which does not allow a lot of things to pass into the brain, because it is a very important organ and it needs to be kept away from a lot of toxic things. So, antibodies are these huge proteins which cannot easily transfer the blood brain barrier. So, if you want to deliver a drug to the brain, it is very difficult to do it, because there is most of the drugs get utilized within the body or metabolized within the body itself. One of the theory is that you can connect the antibody with a drug, and the antibody can target the brain cells so that it reaches the brain, and then over there the drug is then utilized and enters into the through the blood brain barrier into the brain. So, in this way you can deliver more of the drug concentration to the brain areas, and that way you can have a targeted drug delivery. So basically, when a person does a master's in this particular field, they will be doing experiments to test this out. They will be having animal models where they would have engineered antibody. The lab would already have done some research on it. You would come in with, let's say, a new project where you want to specifically check on how much of the drug is being delivered to the brain. So you will dose the animal. After the dosing, maybe let's say at some point of time, you will start collecting the brains and looking at the concentration in different tissues. So when we think about research, it is not going to be as focused on one particular area. There will be different aspects of the pharmacy studies that you learned, which will be utilized through this over this course. Okay, so even if this is pharmaceutics, or your course is specific for pharmaceutics, you will still be using animal models, you will be using analytical techniques, you will be using some sort of chemistry. So in some minor aspects, you will be having exposure to all of these areas as well. So this is what pharmaceutics, one research area in pharmaceutics like targeted drug delivery will look like. Another one is novel drug delivery systems. So I'm sure you have learnt a lot about this during your course as well. But just to give you some examples of the kind of research that happens in the novel drug delivery systems, liposomes, as we all know, have a hydrophilic part and a hydrophobic tail region. These liposomes can be made of specific size. Okay, and you can encapsulate. So within this aqueous core area, you can try to have a particular drug which is loaded into this area. And the macrophages in our body, as we all know, is these are the cells which are supposed to phagocytose all the foreign particles, right? So these macrophages only phagocytose a specific size of particles. They cannot phagocytose all sizes of particles. So if those liposomes are of a particular size, if you want to target macrophages, let's say, you can make these liposomes conjugated with the drug of that specific size, so that only the macrophages can take them up, and in that way you can have the drug which is delivered only to the macrophages. So this becomes a novel drug delivery system. Another example is nanoparticles. This is again an area of lot of interest. Lot of research labs work in this particular area. Basically, what happens is the nanoparticle is basically a particle which is of nanometer sizes, and when you reduce the particles to that size, it helps to improve the dose, the bioavailability of the drug, because the surface to volume ratio has increased a lot. And you can also then use this increased surface area to attach them to different kinds of ligands. So not only in therapeutic purposes, nanoparticles are very commonly used in diagnostic purposes as well, where they may be attached to a fluorescent marker, and then which can be used in radiology or those kind of things. So if you like any such research area, you can try to read more on it. If you go to university websites, you will find a lot of faculty information who work on this particular areas, and you can just go through it to see how what kind of research they are doing. And if you like the kind of research they are doing, you can then choose that particular course or that particular program where you can further pursue your masters in. Okay, a few pharmaceutics programs or pharmaceutical sciences program would also focus on formulation development. This is particularly a good area for someone who is targeting an industrial position or wants to come back to India, because there are lots of jobs related to formulation development back here in India as well. Here the focus is on learning the basic principles of formulating a finished product. You may have learnt about formulation as a whole in pharmaceutics during B Pharmacy, but in a master's program you will go a step deeper into it. You will be experimenting with different kinds of formulations. You will be trying to change some kind of ingredients to see how that affects the pharmacokinetics and those sort of things. As we all know, each active and inactive ingredient will have some specific role, and you can also study the specific role as to how it can be changed, or if that can be altered in any way. So those are different research areas which a lot of people in formulation development do work in. Of course, there is a lot of requirement for formulation scientists in the US as well, and so you can target an industrial position with a formulation development related master's program. Okay. Um, Coming next to industrial pharmacy, this is again an area where basically where you will be learning about how to scale the manufacturing process so that you can have an industrial level production. So, just like in your lab practicals that you may have done during B pharmacy, where you make a very small volume of a product, here you will be scaling it up so that all the different processes will also have to be scaled up. And so, to think about the logistics that will be involved, what may be the good manufacturing practices, the requirements from the FDA, so also those sort of things are covered in an industrial pharmacy program. So, this is one area of study as well, and there are courses which are focused specifically on industrial pharmacy which you can target. Cosmetic sciences is another area where students plan their career in. All the cosmetics that come to market, they are tested a lot for biocompatibility on skin samples, on animal models, or even non-animal models. So, in vitro tests are performed as well. So, they require pharmacy students who have basic understanding of biocompatibility, understanding of formulation development, as well as the biology to know what is a skin reaction. So, these sort of positions are sought after by a lot of cosmetics companies. And they have these kind of positions as well. So, if you are interested in cosmetics, this is one area which you can also think of. Okay. So, this was all on pharmaceutics. Now, coming to pharmacology, here I would like to mention that in the US, the name as such is not very rigidly specified as such. Like an MS in pharmaceutical sciences program does not necessarily will focus on the areas of interest which we just spoke about. A pharmaceutical sciences program can also focus on pharmacology related things or on pharmacognosy related things. So, in the US, pharmaceutical sciences is considered as an umbrella term under which pharmaceutics, pharmacology, pharmacognosy, medicinal chemistry, and these sort of things would come in. So, it would be important to remember that when you search for courses. Coming to pharmacology, one research area here I would like to mention about is neuroscience. So, when you want to do, let's say you want to do a master's in pharmacology, there are specific programs in the US which will focus on neuroscience, or which are well known universities for neuroscience research. So, if you are really interested in working on a specific brain disorder, this could be a kind of program that you can target. So, here what you will learn basically is about how the disease happens, what is the pathophysiology of the disease, where is the signaling which goes wrong, what kind of things are being altered. So, this you study in an in vitro area where you will have cell cultures, you will induce the kind of changes that you see in the animal models or in humans by transfection. So, there are specific experiments that are performed to try to replicate those sort of things. You will also work with lot of animals. So, it is not necessary that because it is a pharmacology program you will be working with animals. It all depends on where your project is at the moment. So, if it is at the really initial stages, you will be doing a lot of cell cultures, lot of in vitro work. If it is on animal work, you will be working with lot of animal models. There are lots of clinical focused programs as well, where you get actual clinical samples from the patients and you can check perform assays to see the levels of different proteins and those sort of things. So, just to give you an example, here brain diseases such as stroke and Alzheimer's disease, they still have no therapy which can actually improve the brain condition. There are researchers which are trying to understand how this neurons network works and how they control the behavioral and cognitive functions. And so, lot of there are also tests which can test behavioral changes as well. So, what is shown on here on the right side is a maze test. So, where you have a closed area on these two planks and an open area within these two. So, under normal conditions, a mice would be roaming around in different areas, but if the mice is particularly anxious or depressed, so they would rather want to stay in the closed areas, and based on the time they spent in different areas, you would be able to see or try to understand what may be the state or cognitive function state, or the mental state of that animal. So such type of tests are used as well. There are multiple such tests which are used in this field. There are a lot of artificial intelligence is also being used now to study behavioral aspects. There are gaming platforms which can test or are able to diagnose Alzheimer's disease much before its actual setting up. So there are lots of areas which can develop from here, and having that basic understanding of how the biology works and how you can probe different areas of function of this cells can really help you if you want to pursue a career in this particular area. So this is one example of neuroscience. Here you can definitely target industrial positions as well as academic positions if you want to continue doing that research and go for a PhD program. Secondly, cancer, definitely lot of programs focus on cancer, lot of labs work on cancer research. It is one of the one of the oldest and most dreadful form of human disease, as we have seen so much suffering, death already happening because of it. But recently there has been tremendous progress as well, which has been made over the last few years. Now you can say that a person who for at least a few of the cancers, patients who develop cancer may be able to live their life almost the same amount of years which they would have lived without having cancer as well. So we have reached that stage at least for a few cancers, which has all been possible through this basic pharmacology research in cancer and related diseases. We will see that lot of new understanding and new theories would be developed as we go ahead, and you would be able to test those theories through these kind of assays and experiments that you do in the lab when you pursue a master's program in pharmacology in this kind of specific area like cancer. So if this is something which motivates you, which you are really excited about, you can start exploring programs related to cancer here in the US or abroad. Okay, coming to pharmaceutical chemistry, there are lots of programs which focus on drug discovery. Here what you will be basically studying is trying to discover a drug, right? So this is not a straightforward process. There are assays which are set up for this in high throughput way, as well as individual assays. Usually what happens is there is a compound of libraries which is generated through some SAR studies or different kinds of testing. That compound library then needs to be tested in a biological assay. So what you see here is a 96 well plate, and each well has a separate reaction with let's say a different compound which is slightly different from the next well, and so the color indicates probably that the reaction is working, and you can see the end product of that reaction. Where you don't see a color, meaning that particular compound was not able to take part in that reaction, and so the color did not develop. So these sort of assays are you can perform and understand what may be the activity of a particular compound or different types of compound. You will have all the data on which well has which compound. You can measure the absorbance of this plate for each well, by which you will get to know which compound is the most well working compound. From there you can further take a few of these compounds for toxicity testing, for bioavailability testing. If that particular compound has low bioavailability, then it may be deprioritized, and that is how you will come to clinical candidates, basically those compounds which you can further take for clinical testing. So this is a traditional method how drug discovery process happens. There is preclinical studies which are routinely utilized to check efficacy and safety of that compound. So all that happens once these kind of assays are performed, and you know that the compound works at least in the in vitro setup. Okay, so one area here, like we need new antibiotics. All the antibiotics that we have currently, the superbugs or the bacteria, they are evolving at such a pace that sooner or later we are going to require more advanced antibiotics which can even act on those kind of bacteria. And so there is a lot of research which is happening in this particular area where we want to develop new antibiotics. So this is one example of a field which you can select for drug discovery, or try to understand the tools in drug discovery. Again, this has a lot of industrial application, a lot of pharmaceutical companies interested in this kind of area. They have dedicated departments who do this day in and day out. But even for further pursuing a research area, or further pursuing a master's, a PhD degree after your master's, this could be a good area. Coming next to another example in pharmaceutical chemistry is drug design and molecular modeling. Here a lot of computational tools have now advanced to such a stage where we can take a target, a protein, and we can have a drug which can be converted into a format where we can dock that particular drug into the target and see how it is binding. To understand how, if it may function or if it may not function. So those sort of things have advanced to a stage where now these things can be used. Computational tools can be used for a lot of screening of candidates or drug candidates. So a lot of software programs are available to do these kind of things. So you can specialize in this particular area where you can do molecular docking, molecular modeling, and try to see which candidates may be more successful and which not. Based on these insights, you can try to take a few candidates for further testing in a biological assay, and based on that you can also validate if this particular process is working or not. Okay. Coming next to pharmacognosy. So as such, if you search for pharmacognosy programs, it may be possible that you may not find a lot of MS in pharmacognosy programs in the US or abroad, but it does not mean that there is not a lot of research which happens in this particular area. It's just that the name which is used is slightly different. A lot of labs which focus on natural product chemistry or natural product synthesis are basically doing the same sort of work, but it's just not mentioned as pharmacognosy. There are courses these are basically courses which involve both medicinal chemistry as well as pharmacognosy, where they are testing the activity of bioactive compounds, of naturally occurring chemicals, and how they perform in a biological assay, and how if they can be then tested in animal models, or further tested in different kinds of in vitro assays, cell cultures. So a lot of natural products and supplements have gained a lot of focus, especially now after this pandemic, where people are more aware of these sort of things, where the natural products that they should be taking which can improve immunity and all those sort of things. So there is a focus on understanding how the nature works, and if we can gain more and more insights from it in order to develop drugs. You already know about so many drugs which have been developed from plant products and phytochemicals and those sort of things. So there is a lot of research which happens in this area as well. Okay, coming to biotechnology, I would say all the pharmacology research, or all the new drug development or testing of a drug, all this research, understanding the basic pathophysiology of a disease, all these aspects of research involve some aspect of biotechnology or the other. This is because biotechnology offers the basic template or all the basic tools through which you can test if your system is working or not. So cell culture is usually one of the first steps to test anything, if it is working or not. If you have a drug, and if you want to test if it works in a particular disease area, you would first test it by growing some cells. You take cell lines which are available commercially, and you can test how that drug performs on that cell line, and based on that the hypotheses are formed for further testing it in animals and humans. So everything starts from cell culture, and so lot of in vitro work happens across all different labs, and so biotechnology programs are focused on understanding and learning these basic skills, which can then be applied to any program. If you are planning to do a PhD later in the core pharmacy areas, biotechnology skills is definitely something which you would be learning over your master's program, or you would be coming across during your program. So the practical skills that you develop while studying this biotechnology course may allow you to pursue any scientific career in industry or in academia. There is a lot of industry focused positions, just as I said, research associate, research assistant positions, which are all biotechnology focused, and pharmacology programs definitely have a lot of focus on biotech skills such as cell culture, gene transfection, protein estimations. So these sort of things are studied in a biotechnology program. Okay, now coming to more of the non-core areas of pharmacy. So we have discussed all the core areas till now, which would help you to pursue an industrial career as well as a non-industrial career, meaning an academic path. The non-core areas of pharmacy are specifically for the industrial side of programs. So here regulatory science is one of the major areas of focus. Regulatory science programs involve understanding the regulations or which are involved to at different stages of drug development. You may have different requirements. Also, what kind of testing is needed to get that product approved. What every jurisdiction, geographical area, like every country will have a separate understanding of separate laws, and so you will have to follow those particular laws to get that product approved in that particular country. So this is all coming under the regulatory science umbrella, and these requirements change even if the product is a prescription medicine or an over the counter drug. So there are different sort of requirements for different types of drugs as well. Within regulatory science, there are different areas which you can focus in and gain expertise in. So for example, regulatory submissions. So if as you all know, there is a truckload of documents which need to be submitted to the FDA when you want a drug to be approved, right? So this includes all the testing documents, all the different physicochemical aspects of the drug, the chemicals used, everything has to be mentioned, the manufacturing process and all those sort of things. So there is an eCTD format for this, wherein the FDA has asked to put in specific information in specific sections, and in the format that needs to be submitted to the FDA. So there are also technical and scientific writing positions where people specialize in specific sections of that eCTD format. CTD is basically a common technical document, and the electronic version is also now available, so you can complete all this in an electronic form. There is a lot of regulatory intelligence related positions, or this is particularly an area where you need to be aware of what your competitors are doing, as well as how to use the understanding of the regulations to push your product to market. So sometimes you need to know exactly what kind of testing needs to be completed to get that product approved, and so these sort of insights are usually provided by regulatory people. And now 10 years back there wasn't even a regulatory department in the pharmaceutical companies. Nowadays each company has a separate regulatory science department, where there are individuals, specialists which helps the companies with these sort of things. Marketing also requires a lot of regulatory intelligence. What sort of claims that you are making, the advertisements if you have seen, what kind of things can be advertised, what kind of things can be mentioned in the advertisement. Those are things which FDA has a tight regulations on, they have complete oversight on, and so these need to be strictly adhered. And so there are regulatory positions which focus on all of these aspects as well as a few more. So once you go through a regulatory program, then you can understand these areas and select which ones you are particularly interested in and think of making a career in that particular area. There are lots of industrial positions in this area, and this should be definitely a course for consideration if you are planning an industrial position. Okay. Secondly, within regulatory science, device regulations is another area which is gaining a lot of focus. In India especially, there are lots of companies which are coming up with new advanced devices. So as you can imagine now, watches and all also have heart rate monitors, and there are smart watches which can measure your heart rate, or your if you're going to get an heart attack, and those sort of things. So all these devices are also considered as medical devices, if they are claiming that they are able to diagnose a disease, or do something with respect to health science. So FDA needs to keep an oversight on all these things as well. If a device can be from a very high risk device to a very low risk device. A normal thermometer which is used to check body temperature is also considered as a device. So there is different regulations for that kind of a device, because there is only so much that can go wrong there. But a pacemaker which has to be implanted into the body, and it controls your heart rate, again that has different sort of regulation, because that is a very high risk device. So within this there are different sorts of devices, and there are lots of requirements which people have to follow, the companies have to follow. And so if you are interested in these sort of things and documents that are required in these things, you can work with a lot of biomedical engineers and support the regulatory submissions based on your biological understanding in this area. Okay. Coming to food product regulations, again food products are something which are regulated by the FDA again. This is because there are lots of food products which also make health related claims, and so it is important that what kind of claims are being made. If anybody is claiming that they are able to cure a disease using any food product or anything, they basically have to follow the guidelines of a drug. If anything is able to cure a disease, it's basically a drug, and so if it is a drug, then you have to perform all sorts of testing and clinical trials to show that it is really efficacious. If you see any label nowadays on any food product, you will see these things such as nutritional facts, serving size, and there are specific requirements which the FDA requires of the things which need to be mentioned on these kind of labels. This has been made compulsory over the last few years, and you can see that it also helps to track the food containers in case of an outbreak. So sometimes a lot of food products are contaminated, or they move from one country to another, or in that case if they are being infected through viruses or any other kind of things, it helps to track them down and control the sort of epidemic situations as well. Okay. Next, within regulatory science also what comes is clinical research, and within clinical research there are different areas such as management of clinical trials. So here, as you know, clinical trials go on for years. There is a team of researchers, doctors, nurses, so many different people who work on a particular clinical trial. So everybody has a different role, and you have to oversee the complete clinical trial. So there is a lot of work which goes into it. So there are courses which focus on management of clinical trials and how the clinical trial should be structured, which hospital should be taking part in, how many patients do you need. So all this requires a lot of research to understand what are the requirements. You have to design clinical studies as well to make sure that the trial doesn't fail. So the design related aspects, meaning choosing the right sites, the right doctors who are going to take part in the study. There are ethical considerations as well. So every clinical trial has to be approved by an ethical committee. So there are many things which are involved in clinical research as well, and the regulations with respect to clinical research, you will study this in such kind of a regulatory science program, and you can then target jobs like regulatory coordinators, research, regulatory submissions, regulatory submissions owner. These kind of positions are specifically in the industry for conducting clinical research. Okay. Coming to another area now, moving from regulatory science to health economics and outcomes research. Here basically this is a new concept for people in India, where pharmacoeconomics, you will see a lot of courses on pharmacoeconomics in the US. What these courses are on is, as you know, insurance is a matter of government control in the US. So the health insurance is usually provided by the government, and so under insurance, what sort of drugs can be given for what disease is all already specified, so that the costing for all of that is already taken into consideration. And so in which situation what should be given, all these things are already set up. The way this is set up is by running through different options that the industry has. So if for a particular disease there are 2 or 3 different drugs available, then which one would be the most cheaper and which one will provide the best effect? With those sort of considerations, the line of therapy is already decided. And so these courses are basically working on this particular area, where they try to identify how these outcomes can be improved, how the health economics should be monitored, and how should they be changed. So all these sort of things are covered in this kind of pharmacoeconomics programs. You should always remember that these involve a lot of statistical analysis and epidemiological research, which we don't really get an exposure to in India during our B.Pharm courses. So make sure that you learn about this course and understand how this works before you choose to do a master's program in health economics and outcomes. Okay. Next is bioinformatics. So as I was mentioning, artificial intelligence, machine learning, this is being used routinely now in drug discovery. Just like with regulatory science, in the next few years you will find a department of artificial intelligence in all the pharma companies. You can imagine so many publications coming out every day, every single day, right? You would have seen it during the pandemic as well. It is humanly impossible to go through all the publications and keep up with all the research that is happening all over the world. So so there are computer systems now which have been developed, so that all this manual labor which goes into reading the publication, taking out insights from them, are they really relevant or not? So those sort of things can be already done by the computer systems, and a scientist or a person with this knowledge can utilize their time actually into doing experiments and testing out things, and bringing out the most relevant drugs. So there are lots of applications of AI and ML in drug discovery, in pharmaceutical research, in basic science research as well. So this can also offset a lot of costs. It can predict what is the likelihood of a particular clinical trial to be successful. So this can save a lot of money as well. So this is an area of focus which has come under in the last few years, which has come under a lot of it has come under the scanner. You can definitely think of a course in bioinformatics or a MS program in artificial intelligence for the pharmaceutical industry, as this will have a lot of growth in the coming years, as we can imagine. Okay, another option is public health. So this is really relevant in these times now. Now that we have had this huge pandemic, where the decisions which the healthcare decisions are made at the governmental level, this can have a bearing on the whole country, and so it can really make or break the situation. So to give you another example, there was a Ujjwala Yojana which was started by Government of India. So as you know, this was basically to reduce the kind of emissions which happen because of the chulas which are burnt in the villages part, where gas pipelines or LPG cylinders are not normally used. There is a lot of smoke which is generated. This kind of smoke is also very harmful to the health. In India, COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, this is specifically a disease which is caused by cigarette smoke. But in India we have it because of this biomass or chula smoke, and to reduce the burden of this disease, the government decided to supply this LPG cylinders at a very cheaper cost or almost free of cost. and so that has really reduced the kind of these numbers of people who have this kind of disease. So this is one sort of an example of how government intervention can help or public health decisions can help. So a master's program in this kind of area would help you with understanding how decisions made at a public level or a public health level can seep down and affect individuals. So there is again some statistics involved here which you would learn during the program, and this would be a really relevant subject area which you can pursue for a master's degree. Okay, Pharma MBA is another program if a student is interested in business management. So now we are coming to courses which are really non-pharmacy, non-core pharmacy area studies, but again this is also not master's program, MS programs as such, Master of Science programs, but this is a MBA option which also a lot of students go into if they want to get into the pharmaceutical industry specifically. The entrance examination again is different here for a Pharma MBA as compared to an MS program. One thing you should also remember is that there are no placement programs. Like in India, all these MBA programs and colleges would have a placement cell where companies would come in to pick up people. In the US, this works a bit differently. Not a lot of companies would go into the industry to perform placement rounds, but a lot of industry students would university students would have to directly apply to the companies and go for an interview if selected. So that is something to keep in mind as well. PharmD, if someone is particularly interested in practicing as a pharmacist, you can choose a PharmD program in the US. This is a lot of PharmD students from India also who would want to practice in the US choose this kind of programs. So these are usually 2 or 3 year courses, and it also has a residency option. But this cannot be guaranteed because you are an international student, and so as an international student you cannot be guaranteed a job as such before you enroll into a course. So that is another thing. The tuition fees again is much higher than the normal MS programs for these kind of programs. There are a couple of examinations called the foreign pharmacy graduate examination certification. This is particularly to show how your PharmD program or a B pharmacy program in India, how is it similar or different to the program in the US. And also the NAPLEX, which is a North American Pharmacist Licensure Exam. This is the actual license exam which allows you to then practice in the US or Canada as a pharmacist in pharmaceutical stores. Okay. Coming to the last option, which is a PhD program, I would like to mention here that PhD programs in the US are completely funded. The students usually get a student tuition waiver, and you also get a monthly stipend which is able to cover all your living expenses. So I understand the PhD programs are very attractive to a lot of students in India who specifically have interest in research, but also another thing to remember is that getting into the PhD program may not be very easy. You have to show that you have some research experience. Unfortunately, our BPharm degrees don't allow us to gain a lot of research experience during our course. Also, these programs are highly competitive, as I was mentioning. So if you are able to gain some research experience during your B Pharmacy, I think that would be really useful. But before applying, it is important that if you can have a publication, or if you can take a gap after your B Pharm, and if you are really sure that you want to pursue a PhD degree, you can try to gain some industrial experience or internship in a research lab and use that to then apply for a PhD program. So all your SOPs, LORs, and we will speak about those documents in the next few lectures. These documents need to be specifically created for the PhD program and should highlight your research experience, which is very important in order for you to get in. They are extremely demanding. They understand that PhD is not just like a course where you take a few subjects and you get a degree. They are more for developing critical thinking ability, you should have an assessment ability of analyzing things. So that is what a PhD program would do. It will help develop those kind of critical thinking abilities, and this it can help you really to become a scientist and pursue an academic career path, or even a non-academic career path. This could be useful, but you need to think about what you exactly are motivated about before thinking of going for PhD. Okay. So I guess these were all the different options that you can pursue. I would like to thank you for listening through this lecture, and I hope now you have a better understanding of what course you can select for further pursuing a master's degree. Thank you.